Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Hi, I'm Dave Towley, and this is my wife Kathy. People here in Bemidji know us as woodturners, as artists. But today we want to introduce you to another side of us, and that's some heritage that we've got on Kathy's side of the family that we're going to share with you, and that's the pit barbecue.
It's been a tradition in my family that goes back 5 generations. My grandfather, which would be my dad's father, it started when my father was younger. They would put in these pit barbecues where they lived or had their summer home in Deer Lake, Wisconsin. And it was an annual event. Family would get together. It'd be big celebrations. It's just a fun thing to do. And so basically my grandfather did it, and through research trying to find out where he got the idea, it sounds like either he brought it back from Mexico because they would travel to Mexico, or he had a brother that during the war was in Hawaii, and this is kind of a Polynesian sort of thing, the barbecue, roasting the meat in the ground. So it could have come from there. So it was my grandfather. Then, of course, my father carried on the tradition. And then as I was born and us girls, I have 4 sisters, basically we'd always have a pit barbecue. And it was normally around the 4th of July. And we would even we'd have it up here at the cabin. And friends, family, all sorts of people would come. And then as Dave and I met, as we got married, they had a few more pit barbecues. Dave became involved. Then our children became involved. And now our grandchildren are involved. And we want them to know and to carry on the tradition. So we have 5 generations. We know that this goes back and probably further.
Well, as Kathy indicated, this tradition predates me in coming into the family by a long shot. But the first time that I helped would have been up here at Plantagenet, would have been the July celebration, 4th of July, and that would have been in 1970. And in those 42 years I've participated. We did a count here, and this would be our 11th barbecue that I've been a part of. And that averages out about every 4 years. Now, the last barbecue that we did before this one was in October of last year for our youngest son's wedding and their reception. So granted, that's not 4 years, but then prior to that, it was about 6 years ago that we had one up here when we first moved up to the Plantagenet. Kind of a celebration, homecoming, housewarming thing. So about every 4 years on average, I've been part of one of these pit barbecues, and it's where it may have been just an obligation to do when you first start out, you know, the future in-laws, and you got the girlfriend, and you want to make a good impression. That might have been the motivation to begin with, but now it is, as Kathy indicated, it's a family tradition. It's become one of my traditions. On my side of the family, we have the lutefisk dinner, of course, at Christmas Eve, and it's important to pass that on as well. And this pit barbecue is something that our boys and their children is part of their heritage, and it's important that they understand a little bit about the background, the best we know, and then also how to do it, and so that they can carry it on after we're gone. As we mature and get older, I think heritage becomes more meaningful to us. And we're starting to see that in our own boys now that they're reaching an age where they want to pass on to legacy to their children. And that was one of the drivers for this pit barbecue as part of our 40th anniversary celebration.
The first thing you do is you pick the date, and it seems to be around the 4th of July. Whatever weekend in there seems to be a pretty good weekend. Then you hope for rain, because if you don't have the rain, you can't have the big fire. So you got to kind of have plan B in effect of, okay, if there's a burning ban, then what do we do? And that's when the charcoaler comes into play. So the weather has a lot to do with it. So you pick the date, you let everybody know, hey, this is what we're doing. You want to be part of it? Come on and do it. The next is basically preparing where you're going to put the pit. And Dave can talk about the size and the selection of why we picked where we did pick it this year.
Well, I'd also interject that you might want to do a wood inventory, because it does take a fair amount of brush and or wood that can be split down into the right size. But again, Kathy was right. You decide where you want to put the pit, and depending on what you're going to put in it, obviously determines the size of the pit. What we generally, a rule of thumb is that you would want the pit to be about 44 to 48 inches deep. You want it to be wide enough and long enough that there's at least 12 to 16 to 18 inches of coals around each of the meat packages. What that does is provides you enough heat reserve, the coals themselves, that it will carry the cooking process through the 12 hours that the meat will be underground. That's a tremendous amount of wood. Now, to give you an idea of the size of the pit that we dug for this one, it was about 40 inches wide, and it was about 44 inches deep, and it was very close to 9 feet long, if I recall. And that was because we had 2 turkeys, we had a 150-pound pig, and then we had a pot of beans that had to go into this hole. We started the fire about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we fired continuously until about quarter to 12 or quarter to midnight. And we went through a considerable amount of wood. It's important when you're looking at your wood that the brush would be 2 to 3 inches typically in diameter hardwood. We don't use conifer because of the opportunity for the resin. You get kind of a turpentine taste. So we use hardwoods. We typically don't use birch bark for the same reason. It gives you that taste. You certainly can use split birch or any other hardwood. And then when you want to split it down to where it's about 2 inches in thickness, the idea is that you don't want it to, you want coals, you don't want logs that are unburned in the pit, because they obviously are a heat sink. And then we'll throw rocks into the fire as it gets to the top of the pit, so that they can preheat and become red hot.
Once you put the rocks in, this is just a caution. Rocks tend to, if there's moisture in them, will explode.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful that when those rocks are heating up, that they aren't exploding and somebody's getting hit with a rock. So you got to be careful there. Try to pick rocks that are real solid and don't have those cracks in them. So that's just a little suggestion.
The rocks are typically anywhere from 20 to 40 pounds, and what we'll do is we will nest those against the meat packages just at the end, when we put the meat in the coals themselves, before we cover it up, and that helps carry the heat through the cooking process.
The meat preparation, depending on how many people you're going to have. You're going to have leftovers, but you want leftovers. I like the leftovers. This year we went with a whole hog. It was actually just a smaller hog. It was about 150 pounds. And we went with 2 turkeys. The turkeys were around 25 pounds each. And 1 big container of beans. And when I'm talking big container, it's a big cast iron actual bean pot that was used probably way back for baked beans. It's a bean pot. And I use actually the family recipe that goes way back, that's been passed on down. It's the bean whole beans. You want quite a bit of fat on the pig, because that gives it the moisture. And I will take some actually garlic cloves and stuff it with a few garlic cloves, not too many, because once again, not everybody likes a lot of garlic, but it gives it that little bit of seasoning. And then I'll rub it with some seasoning, not too much. You can always add salt afterwards. The first step that you do once you've prepped the meat and it's ready, the turkeys are small enough, and I have some big cake pans where it goes into a cake pan. The first step is to wrap it with aluminum foil. And you're going to wrap it layer upon layer upon layer, so no air is going to escape. The next step is you're going to wrap it with newspaper.
Just the newsprint stuff.
And you're talking a good inch of newspaper all the way around. Then you take either a gunny sack. If you don't get a gunny sack, you can get burlap, or you can use a cotton sheet or a cotton blanket, but you want to make sure it's cotton. Wrap it really well, and then you take wire and you wrap it, and you're going to leave a loop on the top. Once all that's done, then you soak it in water. And we have a big tub that basically you take this whole meat and you soak it in this water, and you're going to soak it till it's all wet, because basically what that's going to do is steam it. And that's what you do with the turkeys. The pig, being we don't have a pan that big, we wrapped it with many layers of aluminum foil. And just a secret, because I got the wrong kind this year. I got the light duty. Don't get the light duty. Get the heavy duty. And wrap it really good to make sure all that steam is going to stay inside that meat. Then you take the newspaper again, and once again it's going to be many newspapers, and wrap it good inch thick. Then wrap your burlap or gunny sack or sheet and wire, and you're going to soak that.
Hogs is too heavy to handle comfortably with your hands, so we wrap it with a chain. And the idea of the chain again is to facilitate handling the meat over the coals in and out. And then we carry it over to the pit. We excavate cavities in the coals, again mindful of the fact we don't want any of the meat to touch either other packages of meat or the walls of the pit. They would act as heat sinks, obviously wouldn't cook. So we want to carefully and strategically place the meat by excavating cavities in the coals. We set the meat in level so that the juices don't run out, and then we place those heated rocks up next to the meat packages, and then we'll cover each package of meat with several inches of coals, the best we can, 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches of coals, and then the entire thing is covered with about 18 inches of dirt. And we know we've got enough dirt on the pit when there's no longer any smoke or steam coming up through the dirt. And we walk away and we come back about 12 hours later, roughly. Having talked to Kathy's cousins, that's pretty much how they do it still too. So we've maintained the tradition, I think.
And then the tradition too is family comes, gets together, you have your salads, you have your desserts, and just everybody being together, telling stories, going back in history or different things that they remember. One thing that I have now kind of stopped and asked myself, what are our grandchildren going to remember of us? And hopefully this will be one of them, and this will be a good memory. And creating those memories, because without memories, there's just not much in life. You want to create those memories, and hopefully they're good memories. But memories are so important, because once you're gone, you hope that those memories are there. Well, Dave and I were married 40 years this 8th of July, and I always wanted to just renew our vows. And so we decided to renew our vows and wanted to do it in front of family and friends, and wanted to do it here. Basically, it was very impromptu. It was just something where we just renewed our vows to each other and just kind of said, hey, thank you, we're here, we're going to stick together through thick and thin. And it was just basically getting everybody together. We had people here that our boy's scoutmaster and his wife came, and we hadn't seen them for a while, and it brought friends together that we hadn't seen for a while, and some we had seen, new friends, and just everybody, and hopefully everybody had a good time. I know I did. It brought family together.
"40 years just goes by in an eye blink." And somebody asked me when they heard we were married 40 years, how do you do that, they said. And I said, well, it's if you're with the right person, and not every day is a perfect day. That'd be foolish, and I'd be a liar if I said so. But you find the right person, and you do the very best you can to make that person's day special. and that person's doing the same thing for you. And the next thing you know, it's 40 years and a lot of great memories and a lot of great times and trials and tribulations, to be sure. There's no doubt about that, but we're very, very blessed in our lives, and me particularly so.
Uh-oh, this is it. This is it.
What?
You know what's underneath?
I guess having done 11 of these barbecues and being the de facto patriarch of the family, I have a tendency to want to take the lead. And that's all well and good if the tradition were to end with me. But as I realized as we were opening the meat that there I was giving direction, and I decided I had to step back and step away. We're going to get as much dirt off right now as we can. It's wet. We could have left turkeys in yet. That's all right. And so I actually did walk away and let my sons and daughters-in-law and their children open the meat and prepare the meat and that kind of thing. And it is, in a way, it's a handoff of the tradition.
Pretty soon it'll be your turn, huh?
And it's not that I'm disinterested or that I don't want to be in there, but at the same time, it's one thing to be told how to do it and watch someone else do it. It's another thing to do it yourself. And if this tradition is indeed to live on, I think it's important for the others to be able to step up and to do it.
I think it's actually pretty fun to make. Pretty fun to get it ready. And after it's done, it usually is really good.
Do you see yourself doing this in the future?
Yeah.
What we did is,
And then my son, too. I'm going to teach him how to do it, too.
and maybe it's time for Kathy and I to step back and advise more so than be directly involved. And that kind of came to me as we were pulling the meat out of the pit and we were opening it up. I realized, wait a minute, I'm giving all the directions, and maybe that's not the right thing. So I kind of walked away there. And next year we do it again on the 4th. We'll ask the boys and the grandkids to tell us what they want to do, and how to do it.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.